Since 2012, Gunnar has helped business owners and leaders develop and implement data driven digital marketing and AI strategies to drive meaningful business growth while optimizing operations. And guess what? AI can be used in all of that. So that's why today we're talking about AI. Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Bryn Tillman and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients, so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show. My very special guest here at the Social Sales Link Virtual Studios is Gunnar Hood, Principal and Chief Digital Officer at WSI Summit Digital Marketing Services. If you followed the Making Sales Social podcast, or SSL, you've seen him hanging around the virtual halls here, as he's a frequent guest on the show, as well as an adjunct coach for us in our weekly group coaching sessions. Since 2012, Gunnar has helped business owners and leaders develop and implement data-driven digital marketing and AI strategies. My God, I said that without stumbling. That's pretty good. To drive meaningful business growth while optimizing operations. And guess what? AI can be used in all of that. So that's why today we're talking about AI. But specifically, Gunnar's company has just published a new report called Navigating the AI Landscape: Strategic Insights for Small and Medium-Sized Businesses. How is AI transforming company of all sizes, especially those small to medium-sized enterprises? All of the insights you could ever want are right here. And that's a bold claim, I know. So we're just going to get right into it. Gunnar, welcome to Making Sales Social.
Bob, thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Very good, very good. So this report is absolutely fascinating. I even printed it. Who
Wow,
prints things
that took a
anymore?
lot of ink.
I know. I did set it to black and white instead of color, but yeah. So, and that's a quick tip for y'all out there too. Don't waste color ink when you can print in black and white. So anyhow, seriously though, it is fascinating. Can you just give us an overview and what were you all looking to accomplish and discover when you decided to do this survey?
Yeah, so from an overview perspective, WSI is a global organization. And so, we see from time to time evolution of digital marketing and AI and other elements occur at different rates around the world. And our interest was, since we work a lot with small and medium businesses, is to understand, one, do they even know about AI? And two, how are they adopting it if they're adopting it? And three, what needs do they have related to it? And so we were delighted to get over 500 business leaders responding to the survey from around the world. And that gave us a lot of confidence in the results that we saw come from the questions we asked.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, I guess let's just get right into the data because there is data, because there is a lot of data. We're obviously not going to go through every point or anything like that. We'll actually have at the end of the show the opportunity for you to go and download it and dive in, or I mean to view it at least, and just dive into it and really discover all of what's going on there. But because we're a bit more about sales and ops, we're probably going to stick with that maybe just a little bit more, at least in the beginning here. So as it always seems, when it comes to new technologies and even business paradigms, because let's face it, AI is a paradigm as much as it is a technology for business, there's always a big time split between wanting something and actually knowing how to get it. I mean, just remember back to when the internet started. Nobody knew what was going on, but yet everybody wanted to have it. Everybody needed to have it. They didn't know why. So, for example, 72% of respondents, and this is direct from the survey, believe AI can help meet business goals. Yet, 55% have not had strategic business discussions about AI in the last 12 months. So, again, I got to have it. I don't know how to get it. I'm not even talking about it. So, why do you think there's this discrepancy between belief and action, and how can businesses bridge this gap?
It was a really interesting insight that we saw. And part of that is really the fact that maybe they're hearing the news talk about AI. And so that raises the awareness level. But if they don't have, I guess, resources internally that they can turn to that are familiar with it, this is suggesting that they're not even sure where to go externally to find help for it. And the gap that we see there really suggests that there is a need for awareness and education, and maybe even some consulting help for folks that don't know where to actually begin. And so I think the data points that you just shared really reinforce that.
Yeah, and it's got to be especially big for those SMB enterprises because they're not IBM. They're not, well, IBM's probably not the best type of company, but they're not those large enterprises that have those internal resources that they could go to that have either have already learned about it or it's on their task list, punch list or whatever that they need to learn about this. These SMBs, they've got other stuff going on. They don't have people to throw at it. So do you think that that's just a lot of what's going on there?
Yeah, I think, for SMBs, it oftentimes will either fall on the shoulders of the business owner or, someone at the higher level. And there's some data points that we'll talk about later, I think, that kind of reaffirm some of that. And so maybe they don't have a dedicated department or a dedicated chief somebody to take ownership of something like that, even if it's on the chief IT side or things like that, because they're just resource constrained. And to me, that's also a signal that says, maybe that's why SMBs need this even more, is to leverage resources as opposed to be, having to find more.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, those resources are coming from consultants like yourself, or where do you see that coming from?
I mean, some of it is self-service. There's plenty of free education out there. I mean, our state just, I'm in Oklahoma, our state just announced that Google has launched like a dozen different AI resources for business to tap into for free. And so, some people are inclined to learn it themselves. Others say, you know what, let me just take the short path and get somebody to help me. And, either way is great.
Yeah, 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 definitely. I mean, because these business owners, you know, they have enough on their plate, it seems like to me. I mean, there are times when it's like, I have got to get help on this because I have no idea what's going on. And I just looked at my calendar for the next week and I still got to sleep people. So, that is where I think a trusted resource from someone like yourself can definitely come in and help them with with sales and marketing, especially operations, and where does the data come from and how do you use that, and then training the model and all of that stuff. So I mean, and that gets a little beyond what we generally talk about here. But when it comes to AI and just business in general, there are so many ways that AI can plug into things. And you and I are on here mainly talking about sales and prompts and things like that. And that's all great, but that's just a small part of what AI is for businesses, right?
It is, and I think, that's one of the reasons why maybe we see a bit of that gap is because whatever they're hearing, in the news or other places isn't translating to how will this impact me and my business.
Business.
And so until they get that spark or they see an instance where it can apply, then it's not priority. It's just like, we'll get to that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because they're hearing about generated images, and now people are talking about the video that could be generated from it and the text, everything. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, because they don't know about everything else that AI can do for their business.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a great example to share with you
Yeah.
of an instance we heard about. I think it was a regional bank was looking for ways to decrease operational costs. And they did a time study on their customer service representatives, say, how long does it take them to answer questions? And their
Hmm.
timing said on average is about 2.5 minutes. And so,
Mhm.
could AI help speed that up and therefore reduce their costs? Well, they invested, I think, $14,000 in an AI solution, which would assist the reps in locating answers more quickly for the customer questions. They
Okay.
decreased it to 30 seconds, and the savings for the organization was over $400,000 in the first year. So
Hmm.
that's a tangible, practical example of it's not just sales, it's not just marketing, but here's a small way that you can toe dip into this that can have a very meaningful impact.
That's amazing. That's a great story. And you're right. I think that once business people and I think it's up to people like us to really educate others more about just the potential that AI has to impact and transform an entire business. And we are going to be getting to jobs here in a little bit, but I like your example because that's a way that AI helped with jobs without replacing someone, but augmenting what they can do instead. So I think that that was great. So let's go to the opposite end of things now. The survey shows that 34% said that they have no budget for AI adoption, and 35% stated AI adoption is not a priority in their business plans. We've actually kind of touched on this already, but let's zero in on it a little bit more with how can businesses reconcile these stats with the importance of AI for achieving business goals. And I had recognized originally in the question. Now it's like I'm thinking people aren't actually recognizing this, and I think that that's where the problem really lies.
Yeah. And again, I think it goes back to the fact that they aren't yet translating where it can have an impact because it's still very foreign. I mean, flashback to the origin of the internet, and there were early adopters who figured out how to use it. They started creating websites, and you may
Hmm.
remember there was a yellow pages of internet addresses back then
Yep.
before there was a Google. And so, that was an evolution process. And some might liken today to the early stages of the internet in the sense that people are still trying to figure out what to do with it. And so I've had many opportunities to get in front of groups of people and give them those tangible examples of where it might apply to their business. And I think once they have an opportunity to internalize that, then they start going, maybe I don't have to actually fund this, but it could be self-funding in the sense that we capture savings that pay for the investment to get it off the ground. But again, it takes an idea and the willingness of the organization to say, let's try one thing and see how that goes versus I think some may overcomplicate it by thinking we have to adopt this universally across the entire organization, and that's overwhelming.
Yeah, without a doubt. So doing that one little thing, or maybe doing steps, and of course realizing that it may not work all the time. So I mean, I do think that that's something else. Whether that's poor planning. A lot of times it's just because of data, and sometimes these companies don't really generate enough data for the AI models to be trained on. So, it's not really garbage in, garbage out necessarily, but it's like incomplete in and bad info coming out is probably the best way to put it, just because there's just not enough there for them. So I think companies have to figure out where AI can be a benefit the most for them and then implement those rather than trying to do what an IBM or what a Microsoft or that size of company does with AI, because let's face it, those companies are generating data by the gigaquads or whatever you want to say. That's probably not even a term. But but in terms of that, I do think that that one small piece, or like going up baby steps, is probably the best way to do it, don't you think?
I agree. And, I think about some of the other things that you've invested in your time around really understanding AI and your CRISP model for prompting is part of it is the data set that you have, but part of it is
Mhm.
also, are you asking it to do the right things?
Right.
And I mean, this translates to just a generalized workforce too. If you tell somebody generically to go off and do something for you, what you get back as an outcome is going to be highly variable based on their interpretation of those instructions. But if you
Right.
can get very explicit and specific about how to do things and you're comfortable that they understand that, you're going to get a much better outcome. And the same thing is like, treat AI as if it's a 2-year-old and you have to instruct it very clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I don't use 2-year-old. I say that they're like a very eager intern that really wants to please and really wants to do a good job, and they have no idea how to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like your analogy better.
Yes, yeah. So thank you. I appreciate that. So we are going to back up a little bit and talk about the discrepancy in AI adoption rates between them and among departments, because your study found that management and marketing lead the change, but there's lower adoption in like sales slash biz dev, IT. That one surprises me a little bit. Operations and frontline staff. And you already gave a good example of a frontline staff application. So I thought that that was really beneficial. So understand, with everything that we just talked about as well, how can organizations ensure a more balanced adoption of AI across all of those departments, or as many departments that makes sense essentially to have that?
Yeah, I was having this exact conversation earlier this week with the CEO of an organization, and where it kind of evolved was certain departments seem more inclined to embrace it because of maybe the goals or measures that are used for them. Sales and marketing, it's about revenue generation and, filling the pipeline, things of that sort. And I
Hmm.
think that's where you'll see a lot of early examples of use of AI. As you work across the organization, it gets a little bit more cloudy for some people. IT, they've got huge concerns about data security and other things, and maybe
Yeah.
that's slowing down their implementation of it. Customer service is another area. HR, what are the opportunities? And they're thinking, you know, this is relationships, and we need this in order to do it, but we also know that a lot of resume handling is auto process and so forth.
Yeah.
But a great tool, for a small medium business is to leverage AI to help them write that next job description. I know I've struggled through hours of coming up with the perfect job description that defines it, and instead you can unlock your brain and just let it do the first draft for you. That's much easier to edit, and next thing you know, you're done in 30 minutes with what you feel is 95% good to go job description.
Yep.
And and you're off. And so, does that save you time and effort? Absolutely. um, we gave the customer service as an example, and I'm thinking other departments, accounting and finance, data analysis is huge.
Right.
I've heard another example of a bank that started turning their monthly strategy meetings away from PowerPoints. They don't use them at all, but they had built their own internal LLM with their own data, and they just show up to the meeting and they ask the AI the questions that they need answers to. So it hones in much more specifically on the things that are important. It helps analyze that data in real time so that they're not looking at somebody's interpretation of it, but the AI has helped cranking out the answers for them. They found it to be a much more productive instance.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. So I want to take that cross-pollination thing a little bit when it comes to sales and marketing, and especially what we do here, which is social selling. So what insights do you have from this report for us social sellers? And let's start off with what social selling means to you, and then maybe we can bridge it more into like sales and marketing and potentially even operations and things like that when it comes to bringing all those together with AI to help social sellers.
Sure. So when I think about social selling, social means that you're communicating with people. It's relationship building oftentimes. And that's where I've found my greatest success is developing rapport and relationships with people. The selling part is a natural outcome of you're able to supply something that they need when they need it. But the social part means that you're able to stay in front of them long enough to get to that point because 95% of people don't need what you sell at that point in time. But if you're able to use social selling to share thought leadership, to provide value throughout that relationship, then you're the natural one that they turn to when they have a need for what you do. And technology can just help you with that because it's a, when it comes to thought leadership and creating um, valued content, your brain gets stuck and you run out of ideas at times, and it can help give you those ideas to go, yeah, I haven't talked about that, or here's a great way to approach that. It can help you connect with more people. It can help you, I'm an introvert by nature, and oftentimes I'll see a post on LinkedIn I want to comment on, and I sit there and dwell on it for a minute going, I want to comment, but I'm not sure what to say. And then
Yep.
AI helps me get to that point, and it comes up with an idea that I can refine. And now
Yeah.
I've added something that I think is valuable to continue the conversation. And so that's a really long answer to your question, Bob.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, as especially because what I'm thinking is, people hear social selling, and then people hear AI, and it's like, okay, I'm going to use a computer to help me build relationships with other human beings. How does that even work? Yeah, know what I'm saying? I mean, when you hear I think that a lot of times people still think like, older chatbots and things like that, where that you were talking with the chatbot, and you're thinking, okay, chatbot equals AI equals, computer sounding stuff. How is that even going to help me?
Yeah, and we think about it too in our business, and we test a lot of different things. And the voice technology is getting pretty amazing these days.
It is.
And our corporate headquarters used a test to look at, we had a number of people that had aged in the pipeline of things, whether they were looking at buying a franchise or something else. And so they leveraged AI to do a follow-up outreach with them. And this was entirely synthetic in
Hmm.
terms of a voice that sounded real. There was no lag time to speak of in there. And the conversation was natural. And in some cases, it meant that the next step was a human followed up because they answered the questions or they asked for more information that led to it. But it allowed for a very efficient way to reach out to a fairly decent sized database of aged contacts to re-engage them.
Nice. Really nice. And did people know it was AI ahead of time?
From what we can tell, most did not.
Wow. Wow. So, yeah, that's interesting. So survey taking.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Really interesting.
And the speed of AI evolution is getting better and better. You may be familiar with a company called Synthesia that does,
Mhm.
AI kind of avatars. A year ago, it was very apparent that that was AI generated. Today, they've
Mhm.
had, just a couple of weeks ago, they added in the ability for it to interpret words like sad or happy or enthusiastic, and that then translates to the avatar itself, making it much more realistic.
That's just amazing. That's just amazing. So, I think all this really speaks to, no matter where you think you are at with AI nowadays, it's going to become more and more important in the future. And like it or not, it's very likely going to become more and more a part of your daily routine, helping you with all different types of things. So, Gunnar, you and I were recently discussing Chat GPT's, what I'm going to call the great outage. And yes, I did use air quotes for that if you're listening to us on audio only. And, that was a big deal rather for people like you and me. But most people out there, they either like kind of vaguely remember it or heard about it, or more than likely, they didn't even hear about it. So, what I'm wondering is, how do you think such outages impact the broader adoption of AI technologies among businesses, especially those SMBs?
I think like anything in the world, whether it's your internet service, your cell phone service, because even AT&T had an outage again this week in certain parts of the.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that.
I think it's just something that we have become accustomed to going, if we can recognize the technology will be available 90% of the time or more, that's a good thing. But also, do you have backup plans for what happens when it doesn't work? I mean, I've got my main internet provider, but when something isn't working with that, I've got Starlink as a backup. That's not
Oh,
practical for everybody, but for what
yeah.
I do, it's important for me to have continuous internet. And do you have those backup systems or just backup plans going, hey, if somehow this isn't working, it doesn't stop business. We can still move and do something elsewhere and then come back to this when it's available. I mean, the early days of the internet and everything else were not perfect. And I think we're seeing the same thing here. There's huge dependencies on technology and chipsets and communication tools. And there's always a weak link somewhere in the process. And, once it's discovered, it gets resolved and hopefully improved, but it's going to happen. And I don't think that that's going to hold people back, in
Hmm.
terms of adopting it. And I want to reference something you said just before this too. And that is, yes, there are people that are waiting. And so what's the risk to them? The risk is that if
Yeah.
you have a business and you have competition, what if your competition embraces this and gains a competitive advantage over you? And
Yeah.
you lost that because you were slow to adopt. Now flip that
Right.
around. What if you do it and your competition doesn't? Then what's the advantage that you gain?
Yeah, this is probably one of those times when first mover advantage really helps. There have been some cases where being a first mover hasn't necessarily been a good thing, but especially with the way that AI has improved and just with the amount of improvement coming so quick, and it seems like literally almost every day there is a big AI announcement, and it's like, when is it going to stop? Well, guess what? It ain't going to stop anytime soon. There's going to be more and more and more and more coming all the time, so you've got to get on that train. Otherwise you're not going to be just left behind. You're going to be sitting at home wondering what the hell just happened to my business.
Yeah. And that's what we hope to help people avoid.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, that's why we've spent what, half an hour talking already to really help people out. I mean, because that's what we want to do. So, let's get back to talking about the human element and human oversight and just, us basically, because there's still that perception that AI is going to become the overlord and yada yada yada. And that's not, I'm convinced that that's not going to happen. So, the WSI report does indicate a significant need for more education and training, with 62% saying they're not familiar with AI and 69 not percent not even having taken any AI training, which means people don't have a clue, not only about just AI in general, but how it can be used in business. So, how can all of that be mitigated and ensure that employees are equipped to adapt to this changing landscape of employment, where there's going to be more and more demand for AI, even if it's just as a user. I mean, because AI is definitely going to improve that experience too, but there's still going to be additional skills that people are going to need to have that they don't have already. And before you answer, there's just one more quick stat I want to drop in here. 32% believe AI will not replace human jobs in the next 12 months. Flip side, 47% believe it will replace jobs. So let's let's put that into the ninja creamy of blending and see what we come up with.
Yeah, and in some ways they're both kind of right in the
Yeah.
sense because as you think about business in general and people that you hire for skill sets. So if you've got in the future two candidates, one of which has trained themselves or learned AI skill sets, and one that doesn't, and everything else is equal, which one of those two candidates is more valuable to you? It's
Yep.
going to be the one that has greater or broader skill sets. No difference than, when I first started in business and 286 computers were coming out. I was diving in to figure out how to use those things and, you know,
Hmm.
make that useful to the workplace. That
Yep.
added value, that helped me, accelerate my career over time with technology. And I don't think that this is really any different. And so, will some people lose their jobs? I think the way to look at that is tasks will be eliminated as AI takes root. And then there's a consolidation of things that happen to where maybe at some point you no longer have enough tasks to support three employees, but it supports two. The business owner then has a decision to make, says, how do we, what's the right seat for this third person if it wasn't those tasks? That can they now go off and do something different or more important or value added to the organization, or is it
Yep.
just redundancy? And if that person's not expanding their knowledge base and doing things to add other value, then maybe they are redundant and they lose their job as a result of that. But what can people do, and why is the human in the loop, the way that we refer to it, important? Is because AI still is learning. It's still not perfect. You know your business really well, and AI doesn't yet. And so as you use it, you need to be the supervisor in the equation to fact check the things that it's putting out. If you trust it blindly, you're going to run into a problem. But, having supervisors throughout the chain of the equation in AI is going to be I think, an important part of adopting it so that you have confidence in what it does. And then that employee is adding more value because they understand how AI works, how they can get the most out of it based on their knowledge of the organization and what you do.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And I do think that, you know, I think that, I always go back to like the buggy whip industry example, like when cars came out, everybody says, the buggy whip industry went aside, but yet those people who were making buggy whips, however that worked, I have no idea. But those people probably did end up being re-educated into the auto industry, or maybe even other jobs outside of the auto industry, and they ended up being okay. And I do think that you're going to see the same type of thing with AI. Just people have to be willing to learn. They have to be willing to go out and find the resources that are available for them to learn. And the good thing is nowadays with the internet, and guess what? With AI as well, you can ask AI to train you on AI.
Yeah. And that's a notion that some people still don't understand too, because they
Yeah.
just appreciate it. But you'd also ask the question about kind of the chasm between leadership and frontline employees, or
Yeah.
individual contributors, and the hesitancy. Maybe there is some, I guess, hesitation among frontline workers to adopt it because they are afraid that it's going to impact their job or their skills. I mean, change management at any level is always a challenge. It doesn't matter what organization it is or what the tool set is. There has to be kind of a leadership vision that
Yeah.
drives what's happening. And then we've always found the greatest success to find champions at every level in the organization that can act as a peer advisory of sorts to help move things forward. But if you don't have the leadership vision to start with, the change management fails because people don't see, why are we even doing this? This just seems like work.
Yeah.
And, you know, but there's a great quote that I heard too that can apply at any level of it in an organization, is that the lazy person will use AI to replace themselves. The
Right.
successful person will use it to multiply themselves.
Truer words cannot be spoken there. Absolutely. Absolutely not. And I did have a question about the future of AI. I think we pretty much nailed that one to death, except you brought up something that I picked up on because I'm an old guy. And you had said that something about 286 computers and things like
Yeah.
that. So if you don't know, once upon a time, processors were like 286, 386, 486, and then Pentium, and it kind of went up from there. So I'm wondering, when it comes to AI and its evolution, where do you think we're at right now? Are we at 286, 386, 486, Pentium?
You
What do you
know,
think?
I think it's advancing at a much faster rate than what we saw with, early computer technology. Uh,
Hmm.
so I would say we're probably more at like a 586 level right now if we were to make
Okay.
that comparison. And that's just really in 2 years since Chat GPT. Well, it's not even 2 years yet since it became available, to the
Right.
masses. AI has always existed in the background at an enterprise and machine language level. But, when ChatGPT became available in November 2021, I think it
21. Yeah.
was, or
Yep.
was 22,
22. Yeah. 22.
that suddenly it's been disintermediated and it's ubiquitous in its offering. So that means that there's mass adoption, and we saw 100 million users adopt it within 2 months time, which
Right.
was the fastest rate of adoption. And the funny thing is, there there was a survey done by McKinsey, I think in June of the following year, of which only 14% of adults had even heard of ChatGPT. So how do you equate 100 million users with 14% of adults? I guess when you have 8 billion people around the world, the numbers work out somehow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
think that it's going to continue to advance at a rapid rate, and the current conversation is around safety. And do we release something before we're certain that it's safe? And
Right.
there's a lot of debate going on with that, because what happens if China releases a version of AI that is much more advanced than what we have, but we're holding back because we're taking an iterative approach to it to ensure that there's safety. Now, do we have to play catch up? You know,
Hmm.
I don't have the answers to those things. Those are at a much
Yeah.
higher level. I stick to localized or low level implementation.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I hear that, and then you hear about some of the stuff going on, but behind the scenes, potentially, depending on who you believe, at OpenAI when it comes to safety and things like that, and people leaving because they didn't think that they were being safe enough, and OpenAI saying, "Yeah, we're being safe and whatever." I mean, I just think that you really have to keep an eye on things when it comes to safety and just be informed about what's going on more than anything else, because people like Gunnar and I, we don't know how to program AI, but we can at least say, hey, either watch out for this, or hey, this is great, or this is what people are talking about, at least, just so that you know what's happening and just to be informed about AI. But more and more people, I think, are finally starting to, at least AI is starting to at least ping on their radars somewhat. And I'm thinking that as more and more people talk about it, and as you start to see more and more AI generated photos and videos and things like that, more and more people are going to start going, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I think I'm going to learn a little more about it.
And it's getting built into more and more tools,
Yeah.
whether it's Microsoft products as Copilot, or if you're, a fan of the Adobe Creative Suite, you're seeing more interesting things there. Canva just had a big announcement about,
Hmm.
new tool sets. And so we're seeing it integrated more and more every day. And that leads to confusion in the marketplace around, well, which tool do I choose, and will it be obsolete tomorrow?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I love what those, one thing you can do right now, takeaways types of things. So, Gunnar Hood, with everything we know now as a result of this report, what is one actionable tips SMBs can do right now to get ahead with AI? And, let's toss in getting access to the report as well, because I'm sure that a lot of people are going to want to actually see it now.
Yeah. So if you're seeing us on, visually on the screen, the QR code behind me will get you not only to the report, but to a host of other resources. If you can't see it, then go to gunnarhood.com, GUNNARHOOD.com, and you will get to our AI resources page. You'll find the access to this report. You will also find a 106-page ebook, or guide, if you will, to understanding ChatGPT, prompts that you can use with ChatGPT, and tools that are available out there that can help you with that. And, that's a great first step, is just develop a level of awareness and try one thing. You may go, hey, this is a really cool prompt. Let me try that and see how that works in my world. And then repeat it and see, what a different result looks like. And if you do that, suddenly your eyes or your mind starts opening up to possibilities. And those possibilities lead to more curiosity and questions. And you reach a point where you go, okay, now I've seen what is possible here. And either I can continue doing this myself or I need help. And, there's people like myself and others out there that are able to help with that. We also have an AI readiness survey that you can take for your organization that'll
Right.
map out, where are you on kind of the spectrum of things for AI? What do you need to think about? All those tools are free. So help yourself and, get educated. And then if you need to have a conversation, my contact info is there too.
Oh, imagine that. No, cool. No, in all seriousness, that's great. I think that the report and especially that survey that you just mentioned, the tool that you just mentioned. I mean, for a business to really know where they're at right now and what they need to do if they want to go down this road, and it shouldn't be with if, it should be when, but still, to really start getting an idea, I think, of what they need to do and where they need to be, I think is hugely important.
And, some companies have asked us to help them, with workshops to educate their staff, to educate their leaders. Or it may start with the leaders and then work its way throughout the
Right.
organization
I
so
was
that
just gonna say,
they can identify, here's where we want to focus. Now let's help train the people. And so we do run public workshops from time to time too. And there's a sign up form for anybody who wants to know about the next time we offer that.
yeah, great. Okay, very good. Well, Gunnar Hood, digital marketer and AI expert extraordinaire, and I feel confident in saying that after this episode, after the episode of this podcast, it is always great to speak with you. We talk most every week, anyhow, but I mean, just being able to get together and really go in depth on this type of thing, I think is important, not only just for us, but for everyone who's listening too.
Bob, it was very great of you to invite me on. It's a topic I love to talk about, and it's fun to spend dedicated time talking with you about it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate hearing that. And thank you for joining us today on Making Sales Social. So remember, when you are out and about this week, any week, every week, anytime, make sure that your sales are social. Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.